Today, we're looking at a red ink by Zenzoi Red. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps in the description down below, so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram, and if you're new here, I do fountain pen ink reviews every single day, so I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I inked up this Kaweco Brass Sport with a broad nib, wrote with it for a day, and then used it to take the notes for this video. This first writing sample is done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper in order to have some kind of standardization to look at. There's additional writing samples later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in cartridge form. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 13 seconds to dry. The medium is a little bit lighter than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 15 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we don't get any. Tomoe River with no bleeding and normal ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 19 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 25 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation because there still isn't any. And Rhodia with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a little lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. Now I'm going to call it as shading because the word brown fox is much lighter than the word quick, lighter than the word dog. Lazy goes from a little bit darker to a little bit lighter, so there is some. 14 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen. Still some shading because quick is much darker than brown or fox, and jump gets to go from lighter to darker. 17 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both aren't showing any color variation, although we do get some through the whole writing pattern. I agree with Vita that we can learn a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see a good prime red. It starts nice and light, works its way up, and gathers at the top as you would expect any single dyed ink to do. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And for the most part, it really looks the same. There is a little bit more of the red at the very bottom as it's pushing up, so that part is a little bit darker, but that's about it. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handled itself very well. I can easily read everything there, making me confident using it in a note-taking situation if I wanted to go back and highlight. Now, water is reactivating entirely this ink and pulling it up. It only sat there for 30 seconds. Not all the ink is off the paper, but that's only 30 seconds of it sitting on the surface. And that is all that I needed to get it out of my pen. Now, Pen Flush does everything that water does and nothing more. And the 1/3 bleach solution, while it completely removes it from the paper, it does discolor the paper just a little bit in doing so. I test viscosity or flow with a thing called a tilt test. I'll link it somewhere down below or up in the cards. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Zenzoi Red has a viscosity of 2.58, making it normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average all of those. Now for the inks I've tested, I've found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Zenzoi Red has an average dry time of 17 seconds, making it not just normal, but average. Instead of finding inks that look like Zenzoi Red, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I decided to go with a nice turquoise, and I chose Diamine Marine. The second writing sample is done on Franklin-Christoph and black and red paper. Here we see Franklin-Christoph paper. Now we get no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 8 seconds to dry. Medium is just a tad darker than the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 11 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we don't get any. Black and red notebooks with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 10 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, just a little lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 13 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us no color variation, we didn't get any, and that is all that I have for writing samples. So what do I think of Zenzoi Red? It can shade, but when it shades it looks like it's kind of a pink shading to red, which is not in itself entirely undesirable. But when it goes down as a solid red, it is a bright, screaming red on the page that draws clear attention to what you're writing about. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? I don't care for the pink that comes from the drier pens. So for me, I would go with the solid line provided by a wet, fine pen. Draw the attention to where I want to make the corrections and move on. If you've enjoyed this video and made it this far, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down and tell me why. Thanks for watching.